Warning, this video will contain spoilers for Dragon Ball Super Superhero. If you have not seen the film yet, click off this video now because we're going to get into some really interesting stuff about the film. Last warning, here we go. Cell Max is the main villain of Dragon Ball Super Superhero, and ever since the film came out, alongside Toriyama's statements about Cell Max, we've been discussing about the power of Cell Max and how it compares to the last movie villain from Dragon Ball, which would be BROLY from Dragon Ball Super BROLY. And so what I want to do today is discuss what was stated from Toriyama, the evidence in the body of the film to discuss if Cell Max really is more powerful than BROLY, or if BROLY is still stronger than Cell Max. There's a lot of different statements and a lot of different evidence that kind of is somewhat contradictory in not just the Dragon Ball Super Superhero film, but also in the statements that were made. But you have to always remember that a lot of times these statements are made to hype up the new film. So the new villain always has to be stronger than the last villain. It's just something Toriyama usually does. But again, we're going to break it all down here today on this video. Joining me for the first time here on Geekdom 101, please welcome to the channel, Prided Waif. We're going to be talking about BROLY and Cell Max. What's up, man?
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for having me on the channel, Danny. I am glad to be here. Let's talk about Cell Max versus BROLY.
So you and I had a discussion on Twitter about this because, and you know this from covering Dragon Ball and watching it for so long, how a lot of stuff just doesn't make any sense. And you criticized, before we started recording, a lot of the scaling in this film, which is even more wonky because the manga was going on at the same time the movie was being made, and the granola arc and the moral arc were written technically after this script was already kind of being finalized. So there's a lot of there's just a lot of things that can be very confusing. Yeah. So I want to go ahead and read the statement from Toriyama, and then we're going to dive into what happens in the film. So Toriyama writes, and this is from Toriyama himself from Herms' translation. He says, if Cell Max had been completed according to plan, he would have been a superhuman who even BROLY couldn't defeat. But since he was forcibly activated, he became an uncontrollable monster. So in the movie, Cell Max is activated by Magenta, and Dr. Hito is screaming not to do it because his brain is unfinished. So the way I interpreted that was that Cell Max was already physically stronger than BROLY, but his brain was unfinished, and so he became this big raging monster. Like BROLY, but not really the same way. However, you could make the argument that Toriyama, and it's all about how to phrase, how to read that, because you can read it two different ways. He could have also meant that if Cell Max had actually been finished, like perfected, not to use that term with Cell, but you know what I mean, a perfect finalized Cell Max, that Cell would have been stronger than BROLY. But what's also confusing about this is he talking about BROLY from the last movie, or does he mean BROLY after training with Goku in this movie? So it's very vague when he makes these statements, and that's where people get into debates. And I don't want to debate with you, but you see what I'm saying? He's not really clear, what BROLY he's talking about. Is it max power rage BROLY or BROLY in base? There's a lot of contradictions here. But you made a good point about the mind, body, and the spirit. So go ahead and talk about that a little bit and your thoughts on this Toriyama quote.
Right. So my thoughts on the quote is that Toriyama was saying if Cell had his mind, he would be able to compensate for the weakness of him being a sense of a monster that's just released without any sort of intelligence. All right. Because we know his weak point is his brain, is the head at the top. So that's the very big thing. And since he's mindless, he doesn't really have any sharp movements. He can't really release the full potential of his power and stuff. So he's just raging, and makes his movements very telegraphed. All right. So since he's also a rage monster, he won't be able to bring out the full potential of his power with dealing with key control. So we know that dealing with BROLY in the last movie, which is why they're probably compared to each other, is because when BROLY lost his sense of self, all he had was just straight power, and his ki was just building up. And Gogeta movements and everything, he was more skilled. Even though he was stronger, he was going to the body. He was destroying the ki on the inside. He was moving all over on him. So that's what how I was interpreting it. And the reason why I was interpreting this way is because we have other examples as well, as like even Gas in the Granola arc. When he raged out and he went beast mode and unleashed his instincts, his movements and everything, he was just raging out.
And when
But
you say
then
beast mode, you don't mean Gohan beast. You're talking about
no,
just beast. Okay, just making sure we're yeah. People get
nah,
confused about this. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. That's kind of crazy that they even named
They
it that.
actually called it that. Yeah.
But to go, to further go on from that, Gas end up controlling it and he gets a power boost. His power increases. Same thing happened with Kale in the Tournament of Power. A lot of people don't even remember that. When she raged out, she
Yes.
went berserk. And then when she mastered it and controlled her power and kept her mind calm, she was able to bring out more power and more potential of her ki, and she was stronger, and she unlocked Super Saiyan 2. So
I mean,
that's
you could even go back to GT. Golden Great Ape was a rage, out of control monster,
yeah,
and then once Goku was able to focus, he was able to mutate from that into Super Saiyan 4. It is something
correct.
we've seen a lot in the series, yeah, without question. I mean, and the thing is, even if you think Cell Max is more powerful than Broly, because of what Broly was able to accomplish in Dragon Ball Super Broly, going from being relative to base Vegeta to overpowering him and being stronger than two Super Saiyan Blues in just a few minutes, there's no question that if Broly fought Cell Max, Broly would eventually overpower him, only because we've seen Broly get stronger faster than any other character in the history of the franchise.
Yeah, yeah. He's a true personification of a Saiyan.
Yeah, right. And so that's why I wasn't really like trying to argue with you about it, because there's a lot to this. Not to mention that there are some statements in the film that I find to be quite controversial. Like, I'm not a power scaler by trade. I know that you do a lot of scaling, and I can't imagine it not being a nightmare at this point, because there are so many things, there's so many factors to Cell Max being beaten. It wasn't just the fact that it was both a double team of Beast, Gohan, and Orange Piccolo, and Orange Piccolo was fighting this dude, and Cell had one arm, which Gamma had taken out, so Orange Piccolo could have delivered some damage and weakened him, and then Gohan hit the weak spot. Now again, the key word is that Gohan hit the weak spot that they had known about. If you're going to destroy Cell Max the old school way, which is just blasting him with a beam, that he might not have had enough power for that. So that kind of leans it more towards the Cell Max argument. But Piccolo himself says in the film that when Gamma 2 did the suicide dive from the atmosphere and broke one of Cell Max's arms, that took enough power away to make it easier for Gohan and him to win. So, of course, that
Right.
begs the question, had Gamma 2 not sacrificed himself and weakened Cell Max, could Gohan have actually beaten this guy? Well, we did see Gohan eat one of Cell Max's punches, and this is Cell Max is the giant, and Gohan is just a regular person. So the point I'm trying to make to you, and you have to remember, there's also the fact that Piccolo says that Gamma 1 and 2 are relative to Goku and Vegeta, which is
Right.
confusing because later in the film, Gohan says that he doesn't think that Vegeta or Goku would have beaten Cell Max. So there's a lot here, dude. Like, just talking to you about it, my brain, and I'm not a dumb guy. Like, again, I'm not a scaler, but I consider myself somebody who at least understands Dragon Ball more than, the casual fan. It's still
Right.
something where I'm like just in my own head, bro. Like, it's like, oh my God.
Mind boggling.
It is. And the problem is that if this ends up getting adapted to Dragon Ball Super, the anime or whatever, if they adapt it into a TV arc, they could throw all this out the window.
Yeah, they could throw it all out the window, and it's like, well, what was the purpose of even mentioning all of this? What was the purpose of even, doing this, animating this or whatnot? So it does cause even more a controversy within it, but they could end up correcting some things as well. So you kind of got to
Right.
be a little optimistic.
Well, yeah, and so where do you go? Where would you lean here? Because I know you believe that Broly is more powerful than Cell Max, even though the argument is also going to be Gohan Beast versus Gogeta Blue, who is the last like two films' thing. But remember, when Gogeta Blue beat Broly, he did it by himself. Gohan had help.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
question I have for you is, even though you may think Broly's more powerful, and that's fine, where would you rank Cell Max, and how much power do you think Gamma 2 took away from Cell Max when he destroyed his arm?
That's kind of really hard to gauge because where I
Very
would rank
hard.
Pro Max is he should be easily the way he beat down Orange Piccolo, who one shot the Gammas,
Right.
and he beat down Piccolo with a Nerf arm. and Gohan was able to take that full power punch, and then he was just able to like kick him and then hit him with the special beam cannon and one shot him. It's not really easy to scale him because if he's supposed to be comparable to Broly, how I look at it is he's probably weaker than Super Saiyan Broly, not even the Super Saiyan full power Broly. Because even when you go and look at the statement that Gohan says, he says Goku and Vegeta might not be able to defeat Cell Max.
Right.
So if he says they might, and he's talking about their peaks, because Goku can't go UI, Vegeta doesn't have Ultra Ego or whatever in the way that the film was written. They're going off of the last, they said, directly sequel to Broly. So they're going off of Blue Goku and Blue Vegeta. So Gogeta Blue, it should, dominate fairly easily. Or if you want to say Blue Kaioken, Blue Evolution is their peak, that doesn't matter. It's still Fusion would still be able to overcome Cell Max. So how I'm looking at Gohan is probably the second strongest, and Cell Max is probably somewhere like if he didn't get nerfed, he probably would be able to fight Gohan and give him a better fight. But Gohan would ultimately, in my opinion, I think he will beat him down. I think this is just a bad showcase for Gohan. This doesn't really show how
Yeah, there's
strong
not enough information. And
Yeah,
also to add to what you're saying, and I've talked about this in the past too, when Gohan made that statement about Goku and Vegeta, we have to factor some things in. First of all, Toriyama already, now we don't have the exact dates on this yet, but Toriyama was already beginning the draft for this film before the granola arc. So people want to sit there and throw out, does he mean Ultra Ego? You have to put that aside because when this film was being produced, it was right alongside the manga. And the manga, if you notice with the granola arc, Gohan's nowhere to be found. But we did see Gohan and Piccolo in the Moro arc briefly. And we can assume that that's Gohan and Piccolo prior to this film because I feel like Toriyama would have probably told Toyotaro, hey, don't put them in this arc because they're gonna get a power up in the next movie. So it gets confusing because even though we have been reading, if we're and this is gonna be really make more sense to people who watch Dragon Ball like when we're all older, but for us who are living it in present day 2022, we are reading the manga and the movie comes out in the middle of an arc, and that's really confusing because
right.
the movie was written before the granola arc before the granola arc was even
And more
finished.
art.
Yeah,
And more art.
right,
More art
right,
wasn't
right,
even thought of.
right. But what I'm saying is the granola arc isn't even done yet. So I don't even know how strong Goku and Vegeta are going to get. So for Gohan to make that claim, maybe he means Goku Vegeta from Broly. And that to me makes sense. If Cell Max by himself is more powerful than Goku and Vegeta from Broly in their blue forms, that kind of makes sense. But Gogeta, that's a whole other story because we saw how Gogeta performed against Broly, and Gogeta didn't even break a sweat. I mean, you talked about it a minute ago. I did a whole video on it. Gogeta's strategy against Broly was, if you watch the fight, it's in the movie. He tried to use Ki Blast on him for the first half of the fight, realized that Broly was eating them, and then he said, I'm going to have to change strategies, and went to a physical attack on Broly's midsection. And then, like you said, harness the power of energy from within to do the Stardust Destroyer, or the Stardust... Not the Stardust Breaker, the other move, the Stardust
The Stardust Explosion.
Explosion. Right. Yeah, it's a new move. And that's a great move. And you, for all intents and purposes, with how good Gogeta is, I find it hard to believe he couldn't have hit like a big bang attack or something, just like how Gohan did right in Cell Max's weak spot. Now, here's the next question I have for you. If Cell Max, and this is going to be the real brain, this is going to mess with your brain, bro. If Cell Max had no weak spot, if he had to be beaten purely by destroying every cell in his body, like what it was for Majin Buu, not regeneration, but I mean like to beat him, you had to, there was no weak
You had to
spot.
atomize him.
Right.
Yeah, you had to atomize him.
Could Gohan have gotten the job done, or could Gogeta have gotten the job done? Because I feel like that's 10 times harder than just Gohan hitting him with a Makanko Sapo, special beam cannon from a mountainside or whatever. What do you think about that situation?
Yeah, I actually do think Gohan. I'm be honest. I think Gohan's probably a good deal above Cell Max. And the
Yeah,
reason why I
right.
think that is because they're trying to make it seem like this form is going to be relative to like Ultra Instinct.
I think so too.
So yeah, and like Broly Super Saiyan full power. Because in a way, This is an instinctual unlock for Gohan too. That's probably the
It's
reason
like
why
a
it's called
primal
Beast.
instinct kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is his actual Saiyan instincts. You know, his resolve because he's mad. He gets mad off anger. So it's kind of in a way it's symbolic. It's in like a reference to kind of just like Broly Super Saiyan 4 power, or even when like another instinct is like when Trunks rage form. He got
Rage. And
his
Kale.
own form. Yeah, yeah, and Kale. So how I look at it is he's probably a good deal above Cell Max, and Cell Max would have gave him a better fight, but it would have been kind of just the same like how it was when he went against Super Perfect Cell back in in the Z or whatever. But this time Gohan is more, he's more honed. He's a better. He knows the stakes this time. He's still cocky though, because we seen that smile at
Yeah.
the end. He got punched. He's like, "Is that all you got?" So, but he's one for one. In terms of skills with Goku, whatever. And I don't think Cell Max would have had that per se. I think he probably would have had his own type of knowledge or whatever. But Gohan is refined. He's a refined fighter now. So how I'm looking at it, Cell Max still getting that same treatment. He's still getting that, that mid difficulty. He's probably gonna be a little medium difficulty. Same with Gogeta. I think Gogeta still will be able to beat Cell Max as well. I don't think that they will have Cell Max be too much above Broly to the point to where Gohan wouldn't be able to contend.
And the reason why the topic is so interesting is because, again, if you look at this quote, because this quote, the way Toriyama phrases this is very vague. If Cell Max had been completed according to plan, he would have been a superhuman who even Broly couldn't defeat. But since he was forcibly activated, he became an uncontrollable monster. So part of me thinks that he's talking about power, but the other part of me thinks he might be talking about also fighting ability, because I feel like what he might be
Oh,
talking about, right, is that if Cell Max had been complete with his brain intact, because Dr. Hito in the film says his brain is what's incomplete, he could have maybe beaten Broly because, like how Gogeta beat him, which is
right,
strategically beat him. So
right.
even if Broly was getting stronger and stronger in that fight, perfect Cell Max or completed Cell Max, which is a fictional character right now, maybe we'll see it in the future, could have probably beaten that Broly. Because he says, because it's all one sentence. And like, it feels that way, that maybe because he doesn't say a superhuman that was stronger than Broly. He said Broly could not defeat, and
Defeat. Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. So that's
yeah.
why this quote, and I'm gonna let y'all in the comments. I mean, if you want to fight it out, just please be respectful here, because it is that quote is messing with me. But one thing you gotta also understand about Dragon Ball, and we gotta talk about this too, is every time there's a new arc or a new villain, he's always gonna be stronger than the previous one. And now with Kid Buu, that's been an argument in our fandom for decades, because Buhan was said to be the most powerful Majin Buu, and then Kid Buu was the deadliest. But then there's contradicting evidence in the anime, and that's why I'm a little bit worried about when they adapt this, because I think it's going to bring up even more debates. And so you have to understand, like, this is not easy. Like, I feel like scaling Dragon Ball up to like the Cell Saga is a piece of cake. When you go beyond the Cell Saga, especially with Super, then it starts to become a little bit more vague. And I think Toriyama might have been saying that so that people say, wow, Cell Max is more powerful than Broly. Now, I want to make this clear. You and I are not saying that Cell Max or Broly are weak, because both these dudes would one-shot literally the entirety of Dragon Ball Z, right?
Yeah, yeah,
No
yeah.
one is saying that. Cell Max could flick away Perfect Cell, but it all comes down to who's really more powerful. And I have this weird feeling, bro, that I just had this weird feeling that they might actually say that Gohan outdid Gogeta Blue, which is going to really bother a lot of people, because let's not forget, the Ultra Instinct Goku versus Gogeta Blue argument is still going on. I got a video on my channel that 1 million views that I did with Seth where we talked about that. So, but that's a debate for another video. So to wrap it up, bro, you believe that the reason is but you believe that if Cell Max had been finished with his brain, he could have harnessed that power. So the Cell Max they were fighting was powerful, but it was
He was nerfed.
he didn't know how to tap into his true power. Sort of like
Right.
So it's sort of like how Captain Ginyu took Goku's body but didn't know how to properly use it.
Yes, yes. He didn't know
That's
how to
fair.
bring out that key and that energy or whatever. Same instance here. They even say it for Broly and the Saiyan guy, that if he was more calm and he's relaxed, he could have defeated Goku. And that goes for hypothetically, they could go for Gogeta as well. Probably could have pushed Gogeta to where he wouldn't be able to, you know, overcome Broly's, reactive evolution getting stronger and stronger. And since he's calm and relaxed, he's able to fight with a level head and control his ki. That's kind of the point of mentioning Jiren in the movie because
Oh,
Jiren
I
has
hated
mastered
that
this
though.
down to an instinctual level. So it all
Oh,
goes with
they
each other when you look at it.
they nerfed Jiren. I didn't like that. That was the one line of the movie that actually bugged me. There's a lot of wonky scaling in the film, but that's the one thing that really bugged me. I will say though that with Broly, he's a mutant. He gets stronger as he fights, and when he gets angry, he also gets stronger. But the idea with training Broly is to get him to control his anger and tap into it only when necessary, which is sort of like what Gohan did. So, in a way, Gohan's awakening may have been something that's because he's a hybrid, he's a half human, half Saiyan, character. Whereas Broly's a full blood, so maybe he can't get the silver hair and the red eyes. He can get the green hair, which is what he
Green
did
hair,
get.
yeah.
Yeah, and the big ass muscles. So
Yeah.
there is that. But it all just it's Dragon Ball scaling is a mess. But anyways, y'all, I will leave a link down below. Check out Private Waif. I'll leave a link to his channel, and so you can reach out to him and check out his content. I'm sure you'll talk about this because we're gonna be talking about this movie for a while, yo. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot to
Especially when it goes
digest.
worldwide. Especially
Yeah,
when it goes worldwide.
because it makes you wonder too. Like, if Gamma 1 and 2 were equal to even Blue Goku and Vegeta, the fact that they were able to disarm Cell, for all intents and purposes, Goku and Vegeta could have disarmed Cell, and then what would he have done with like both of his arms? Like, there's a lot of what ifs. Like, you want to talk about like how there's a lot of what ifs on Dragon Ball on YouTube. There's a lot of what ifs just with that Cell fight. You know what I mean? Because also Goku and Vegeta are more experienced than Gamma 1 and 2. So I don't like the idea of Gohan saying they couldn't have won when we know that Goku and Vegeta have way more experience than Gohan. They could have figured it out, bro. Especially
Yeah.
Gogeta.
Yeah. But you also have to realize too, from Gohan perspective, he ain't seen them since the Tournament of Power.
Yeah, well, I mean, but remember, it's all about like how the moral arc is right after Broly supposedly, and this movie is closer to
It's
the end
right
of
after.
Z because of
Yeah.
Pan. So it's a
It,
man, because he hasn't seen
but
him
they,
since the
it's
moral
the
arc.
way, it's the way that they said it though. They said they wrote it as directly a sequel to Broly.
I
So
know. It's
that's the big thing when you looking at it for manga. It's gonna, of course, we're gonna have to look at it differently because manga already has a set. But right now for anime, this is basically what we have. This is what we have to
right,
go on because all of it's hypothetical. This is kind of the reason why I really don't even like Toriyama saying, "Oh, if Cell Max was completed, he would be able to defeat. I mean, not even Broly would be able to defeat him." Like, we don't need that because we didn't see that. We didn't see them
right.
fight that Cell Max. So
Yep.
there's no point of mentioning that.
Broly didn't. Yeah, Broly didn't. Broly, Goku, and Vegeta were left out of the story. And I
Yeah,
still feel like if they were there, they would have won. I'm sorry, but even though Gohan's new form is awesome, I still feel like if it was Goku, Vegeta, and Broly against Cell Max, the three of them together could have probably won that fight, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. There's also, I don't know if you remember, but remember them saying that the next movie won't be as, the villain won't be as strong as the last one. There's also that as well. So
Was that when was that said?
that was remember the director from the Broly film, that he's on the One Piece film now or whatever. But
Nagamine.
yeah, he said that the next movie, the next villain won't be as strong
Yeah, but
as
that was
the
like
villain
years
from that
ago
one.
he said that though.
But the script was already being written alongside.
I mean, you're not wrong, bro. And
And then
also
he also said that Goku and the Goku and Goku was approaching the level of the gods, and Goku could only go to Blue.
right.
And remember in the movie, Blue Goku was sure that he was the strongest. Now, aside from Jiren or whatever, but he felt like he was the strongest until he met Broly, and Broly showed him up and made him see that he could go to a higher level. So it
Yeah.
makes there's some sense there. It's just very contrived, very
Right.
contrived.
And just to add to what you're saying too, and we need to, I think Dragon Ball fans, because I think a lot of power scaling debates, people take what Toriyama says and don't really understand Toriyama. Now, you should obviously take input from the creator. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you have to understand Toriyama, and a lot of people don't. Toriyama's a troll, number one. And number two, Toriyama literally multiple times in the past when he's asked questions, he's made shit up. Let's not forget that he's done retcons in interviews. Oh, well, Majin Buu wasn't created by BBD. He was created in the beginning of time. Like, he just pulled that out of his ass. So, for all we know, they could have asked him, can you comment on Cell Max? And he could have just been like, well, had he been finished, he would have been stronger than Broly. Just to, so everybody can go, oh, wow. Like, he loves to do that because Toriyama was a gag manga writer first. So, and I'm not doing that to the author. I'm not trying to disrespect the guy, but I know the guy. Like, I read Toriyama's works outside of Dragon Ball, and I think a lot of us, because we were raised on Western American superheroes, we think that Dragon Ball is seen the same way by its creator, and it's not, bro. No, Toriyama does. A, he doesn't give a shit. That's the truth. And B, he will just say things. So maybe Cell Max isn't as strong as Broly, or maybe he is. I mean, and either way, if they do the Dragon Ball Super anime adaptation, like I talked about, they could change all this. So, anyways, thanks for being here, bro. It was fun.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me have a platform, coming on the platform. So
absolutely, no, anytime. No, thank you. And hey, have a good one, everybody. Leave your comments. Let us know. Leave a like. I'll talk to y'all soon.